Thank you again for attending my presentation for my Gold Award event, Rope Winner Derby and You. Okay, so why did I choose Rope Winner Derby? Well, I ran this event 2 years ago, and I saw the potential that it could have to increase girls' interest in physics and engineering. And while the percentage of women in the general field of STEM has increased, there has not been the same progress made across the board. As you can see, while the percentage of women earning degrees in psychology and biological sciences has increased and become equal, there's still a very large gap in the other sciences, the largest being computer science, engineering, and physical sciences. The lack of women in STEM is even noticeable at the high school level. In my class, in my AP Physics class, I am one of 7 girls out of the 19 students who chose to take it this year. Confidence, I believe, is one of the reasons that girls choose not to pursue these fields or classes in school. And I find that the best way to gain confidence in a subject is to have an increased familiarity with it. So this event, as is designed to build on itself each level and will help girls gain confidence, build it up over the years by gaining experience in this field. So even if they don't attend the previous years, the course is designed to still provide the knowledge that they'll need for the activities. So Rope Winner Derby is a great way to build this confidence because it's specific to Girl Scouts itself. The first Rope Winner Derby was invented by a troop leader in Ohio. So this distinguishes it from both Boy Scouts and from other school activities because it gives these girls a place to build experience in an environment that they know is safe and is comfortable. So the curriculum is designed to teach concepts and then immediately reinforce them by going through a related activity. And then after the activity, we go over how it relates to what they learned prior to doing the activity. So it's like double enforced. This will increase their success and the ability to use what they learned when designing the rope runners, which will then make learning physics and engineering a positive experience. So with this outlook on the subject, I hope that it will encourage girls to attend this event and to take subjects in high school or even pursue a career in the field. Okay, rope runner materials. As I've been running this event, I've gathered up all of the materials that I've used, and I hope to share that with you. Go. Okay, so some of the most important materials out of these are the event registration, the activity materials, STEM curriculum, and the rope runner diagram. So here are the activity materials. This is a list of everything that you use in the kits. So for the activities, that's in the curriculum, and a list of the materials that I included in bags for that the girls could use to make them create the rope runners. And then additional materials that I used 2 years ago, like the chairs, the decorations, the trophies, when running it in person. And so it organizes them by the scouting level and then helps you figure out how much you need per girl and then per level. Okay. This printout is one of the resources that I created for designing the rope runner as part of the design process. And this is where they kind of hash out the ideas of what they want the rope runner to look like. And then also included is the materials and this question, which will then cause them to use the prior knowledge that we taught them in creating the rope runner. Okay. Okay, so when setting up for either Zoom or in person, you really have to be meticulous. So everything needs to be pre-set up and extremely well labeled. So when I organize the materials by the troop and by the grade level or Girl Scout level, I put them in 2 separate bags, one for day 1 and one for day 2. And then in addition to doing that, I set it up by troop level and labeled that. This way, nothing goes missing during the process, and we don't have to go back and forth between troop leaders or between parents and trying to find those missing materials or getting that to them before the event. Okay, so here are 2 things that I would recommend putting in the bag in addition to the materials is a list of the materials in the bag. So in case something does happen and we're missing materials, we can immediately figure that out and fix that. And also on the bag itself on the outside, if you label it with which day is which bag, that'll make for a more smooth transition during the event itself. And the girls will immediately have on hand all of the materials that they need. Okay. As part of the information that I sent out after the registration, I included instructions for dropping off and picking up the completed rope runners. When I did set up the rope runners for pickup and drop off, I organized it by scouting level and then numbered the rope runners myself. If you decide to include the number of the rope runner in the girls' material kit that they pick up on the first day, you could organize this drop off and pick up by the number of the rope runner. Now, if you find that the racer's number or the name tag is falling off from the side, you can just add some tape to that and that'll help hold it on. And that way we don't lose any rope runners or get confused about whose is whose. I mean, they're pretty characterized by the girls who make them, but just in case. I also included a section that you can see on the left for drop off of the rope runner papers. This way I had more information that I needed for the race day, like the girl's name who matched the rope runner. Okay. Now when you're teaching the curriculum, it's really a good idea to be organized. Now it kind of looks a little chaotic in here, but you can see up front are my materials for day 1. So I organized it by daisies, brownies, juniors, and cadets. And then above the materials list, I included the examples that I used and the extra materials that I used when teaching the activity. And then on the other side of the monitor on the desk is my camera setup. So I have this camera, which I used to show my face when I needed it. And then I had a second camera also logged into Zoom to show my hands and so that I could give an example to the girls. And I would change which spotlight I used based on whether I was presenting a slide or whether I was instructing them on how to do an activity. Okay, so next we're going to go through the curriculum that I created for this event. Okay, so each different section is split up by the grade level or the troop level. And this one is the daisies. So each different scouting level gets 45 minutes blocked off over Zoom. And then I gave myself like an extra 15 minutes in case it went over. And then, or if I needed to set up for the next, for like brownies or juniors. Okay, so the daisies learn the basics of what an engineer is, forces and air resistance, and then we do their activity. Okay, so the important thing is to keep it really simple for the daisies. They haven't learned anything about physics yet, as is expected. And so when you talk about a force, just saying it's a push or a pull is more than enough, and then giving a few examples. Now within my slides, in the speaker notes, I've included like instructions for how to run the activity, how to teach it. and as well as different notes that I've made on how to teach forces, or if something's confusing, how to answer their questions, information like that. Now, when running the activity, you just pull it up and you have all the instructions. In the picture, you notice that I used paper, but I would highly suggest using something like foam instead, because it'll be easier to use and it won't be as unwieldy. Because what I did with the paper is that it wouldn't flatten out. I put beads between each layer, which made it way too wide to like blow properly. Okay. And then after each activity, we go over how it relates to what they learned previously. So in this case, it would be surface area. You know, larger surface area, more air resistance, less surface area, less air resistance, less movement. Okay, and then we go over it again. Okay, brownies. Brownies learn something very similar to daisies. They work with engineers, forces, and forces again. Each section for both daisies, brownies, juniors, and cadets all talk about air resistance, because air resistance is like the main force that's used in a rope runner race. Okay. Now for the brownies, the setup and the activity took a really long time. So when organizing the materials, prep everything as much as you can to take some of that time out so they have more time to do the activity. Because what the brownies do is they build these little clothespin cars, and they roll them down a rope facing to roll them down a ramp facing towards them and then blow on them, which can be actually a little confusing. And I didn't give enough time for that part of the activity. So if you prep the clothespins, like already glue them together and then just have them put the sticky note on and then make the wheels together, that will give you more time to figure out the activity and play around with that. Okay, juniors. Juniors is one of my favorite activities because it's not a roller coaster, it's a marble track. So first, we learn about friction, and then we do potential and kinetic energy, which works really well with the track. When I first ran this event, we only did the marble track, which was over really, really fast. And it took like 15 minutes out of the 45 minutes I gave for it. So we ended up just playing around with the track, which was great, but more instruction would also be nice. So I added a slide about friction and some additional ramps. So all of these ramps here are stuff that they can find around their house: a clipboard, cardboard, blanket, and then that'll be included. All those materials, any at-home materials like those, or like books to stack for the top of the ramp, let's see, like books here, will be included in a material list that you then stick inside of the bag that they pick up from your house. So that's really important, is to have that material list of at-home supplies so they don't have to go looking for that during the meeting. Okay, so we'll talk about friction with the first ramp activity, and then we'll talk about potential and kinetic energy with the marble track. And again, afterwards, we go through the conclusion, what they learned, and how we apply it to the rope runners. Now, the cadets, being the oldest, have the most freedom than anybody else does. And instead of learning about forces as much, because hopefully they'll have a little bit more background with that, whether in school or from attending this event previously. So we don't focus on forces as much, we go more into engineering. So here they learn about, they do a crash course on forces, and then we move on to criteria and constraint, and then form and function. And because these are things that engineers have to use when creating a product. Okay, so then we guide them through creating a parachute. We give them a criteria, we give them a constraint, and we kind of just set them free. So unlike the the daisies, the brownies, and the juniors, where they had a set number of materials, and they had to use those materials exactly how we told them to. The cadets get a random assortment of materials, and we just give them a criteria and constraint and then set them free to figure out which materials are best to use for a parachute. Okay, so that's it for day one. It's very structured, 45 minutes each group, and then that's it for the day. You set them free. Day two, everybody logs in at the same time all together. So this will allow for like more collaboration, hopefully, and then we can make sure the knowledge is shared between levels in case something is missed as well. Okay. So we go through the design process and define the need, brainstorm, design is all loosely within these slides. So sometimes it'll be labeled, sometimes it's not. So we'll start out here, brainstorm. Okay, but then we like go on to balance. And so balance is kind of part of like brainstorm section. We're just hitting on some of the stuff that rope runners use. They need balance to go down the rope. And so it's important to include. So I stuck it over in the brainstorm section because it'll help with some of that knowledge. And when you go and run your own event, you don't have to use everything that I did or in the exact same order. If you decide that, oh, I want to include something more with forces for the cadets, or change how we run the activity for the daisies, feel free to do so because it is now your event and not mine. So, okay. Okay, so this is just going through the design process. It's a little bit more active and involved than the other days. So we have them get up, we have them move around, and we have them speak up, especially for the test and evaluate section. So I definitely encourage them to unmute or type in the chat if they're too shy to unmute. And make sure you're checking the chat because sometimes it can get hidden when on Zoom. Like right now, I have no idea where my chat is. So, but make sure you can see it and that it's available for you to see when you're running this event. Okay. And these are the papers that I showed you previously that will be included in all of the extra materials. And these materials I'll be sharing with council, and they'll make it available to anybody who's running the event. Okay, so after we go through day two, we move on to construction. And all of the construction materials will be included in the day two bag that they got originally picked up from your house. So it'll include the rope runner, it'll include like feathers and a tape, construction paper, anything you want to put in there that they could use to make their rope runner. Okay, and at this point, they're free to log off from Zoom and start making the rope runner. I stayed on for another 30 minutes or an hour, some amount of time, just in case they wanted to show me what they're making, or if they had any questions, then I could answer them right away. Okay. Let's see. Do you have any questions so far that I can help answer? Okay, let's. Okay, so now that we've gone through the online curriculum, we're going to go through the in-person, how I would run it in person. So unfortunately, last year I was not able to run it in person, so I adapted it to be an online event. But 2 years ago, I did run Rope Runner Derby in person before I started my Gold Award, and so I was able to use that to create some of these ideas. Okay, so this is kind of how I would timeline the event. It would have to be early in the morning to the afternoon, just because it's so long. We have, the first 45-minute section of the curriculum, which is day one, And then we have another hour or so for day 2, or the design process. And then they have to have time to make the rope runners. So I'm giving them about a little over an hour to make their rope runners. That should be enough time. But in case they do run out of time, we also have lunch. So during lunch will also be another time for them to finish up the rope runners if they need it. Then after that, the parents and family arrive. We'll have seats set up and the race can start. Okay, so program aids will be so important for the younger girls. Well, it's easier to help everyone in person when over Zoom. It won't be so at the actual event because you won't be able to run it just yourself. So you're going to need like your troop members or some other PAs that will volunteer to help you run it. Okay. Now, when for my registration, I had 12 Brownies register, which was the most out of any groups. I had 7 juniors and then 7 cadets and 3 daisies. So when you're assigning PAs to help out with the different groups, I would assign the most PAs to the Brownies. Then again, it always depends on how many girls register at your own event. But also Brownies and daisies being younger may need more help with the activity. Like on Zoom, every daisy had a parent with them, like on standby in case they needed help. They're sitting right next to them. And then the Brownies always had somebody in the room. So make sure you have enough PAs to help out the daisies and the Brownies. Also, prior to the event, it would be a good idea to share the curriculum resources and the information with your PAs. And that way they'll be able to read up on all of the physics before the event and will be able to then explain it to the girls if they have any questions. Okay, now for the design process section, everybody's going to come together to do this. And with the way the tables are set up, they'll probably just end up sitting at the tables. So I think it would be a good idea to have like a poster with the design process diagram on it. But overall, because we don't have slides, it'll be a much more verbal process. But on the bright side, it'll be a lot easier to like brainstorm and think out loud. No need to unmute your mic. So I suggest getting a standalone whiteboard to use for the brainstorming part of the process. And it could also be helpful to have a list, whether also on a poster or just in your hand, to go through for questions and stuff like the balance activity, and for the test and evaluate experiment, to remember what order the events go in and what questions you want to ask the girls to get them to think. Okay. So it'd be a good idea to just keep the whiteboard up in case you ever need it. And then you can always go back to it. Like if you want to start with the brainstorming section and write all those ideas out, you can go back during the redesign section of the design process and add to your ideas to the brainstorming section. The race. Okay, so the race over Zoom was much different than the race in person. Here we go. Let's look at these pictures. So on the left, this is the setup that I used 2 years ago for Rope Runner Derby. We had 4 lines of racers and a flagger at the bottom for each to kind of show who got in first place. And on the right, when running it over Zoom, it was so much easier to record which racer got in which place, because we just had one rope, and then I had my troop mate stand at the bottom to catch it, and then also time the racers. Let's see. So if I was to use the 4 racer track again, I would, instead of using flaggers, I would have each girl at the bottom be a timer. And I think that would be a lot more, it would be more accurate to which place the rope runner got in, and it would just make the event run smoother. So here is the 2 different methods that we used. We used kind of elimination bracket method when in person, and then, as I said before, we used timing for the race runners over Zoom. So over Zoom, I ran each racer consecutively 3 times down the rope, and then we took the best time out of those 3 times. And I had somebody else recording this. So I had somebody recording the times, I had someone else catching and timing the rope runners. And then if you wanted, you could have somebody else behind the camera and making sure that was working. I know I had problems with my mic that I had to fix. Okay. And then in person, again, you're going to need a lot more people than over Zoom. We had the 4 flaggers down at the bottom. I had another person watching the flaggers to determine who raised the flag first and who raised the flag second. And then I had somebody else recording on the whiteboard, what you see here. And then at least one girl was turning the starting gate to release the rope runners. And then someone else was bringing the rope runners from where I had them in the parking area to up to me on stage for us to put on the track. Okay, so the bracket method is a little more complicated than timing them. We listed out all of the racers. There were 32 that year. And then 2 racers would make it to the next round. So from each round, each bracket, 2 would make it and 2 would not. So the 2 that would make it would then get paired with other racers who did for the next round of races until there were only a first place and a second place racer left. For the girls who didn't make it would go on to race for third place. And just like for racing for first or second place, it would be 2 winners from each bracket would then race the other 2 winners from the other brackets until there was only one third place winner. Another cool thing about running it in person is that we had trophies and contests. So I had a trophy for first, second, and third place, and then a trophy for best dressed, most creative, and people's choice. And so all the parents and family members and all the Girl Scouts attending could walk through the parking lot, or not the parking lot for the rope runners, and vote on which rope runner they liked best. Okay, so that was all I had prepared for you today. So thank you for attending this event and hearing me talk about my curriculum and sharing all the information with you. So if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Okay, well, thank you for coming, and I hope this inspires you to run Rope Runner Derby at your own, in your own service unit, and to carry on that tradition year to year. So thanks again. Have a good evening.